Hi, everyone. I'm Lily Gonzalez, director of the San Antonio Book Festival, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to Get Lit, featuring Brit Bennett in conversation with Jason Reynolds. It's going to be a good one. I know that we have friends tuning in from all over the country right now, and you might not be familiar with the San Antonio Book Festival. 2020 was our 8th anniversary, and we had the very bad luck of having to cancel our event 3 weeks before it was scheduled to take place. If you like today's conversation, please be sure to join us for the 9th annual San Antonio Book Festival, which will take place entirely online April 9th through 11th. We are coming to you all in 2021, right into your homes, and we are working hard to make it as close to the in person event as we can. We are 1100 months into this pandemic, and I think that we're all pretty fluent in online events by now. So, you know, to use the chat to talk to us and to talk to one another, of course. And if you have a question for Brit Bennett, you just hit that Ask a Question button below, and we'll try and get to as many as we can. And of course, if you don't have a copy of the book, Brit's book or Jason's books, we ask that you buy the books. When you order from this page, you will be supporting our official bookseller. It's a terrific new independent bookstore here in San Antonio called Nowhere Bookshop. So support them and get some books. Let me tell you about our wonderful moderator tonight. Jason Reynolds is a #1 New York Times bestselling author, a Newbery Award honoree, a Printz Award honoree, a 2-time National Book Award finalist, a Kirkus Prize winner, a 2-time Walter Dean Myers Award winner, an NAACP Image Award winner, and the recipient of multiple Coretta Scott King honors. Reynolds is also the 2020 to 2021 National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. Jason was at the San Antonio Book Festival in 2018. Aside from his appearance at the book festival, he did 3 author visits while he was in San Antonio. And one of them was at a community event that had about 100 kids from one of the Boys and Girls Club branches who had been driven to the event. And every student that was there got a free copy of his book to take home. And the director of the Boys and Girls Club at the time messaged me that night to tell me that it was the quietest bus ride that he had ever had with the kids because they were all engrossed reading Jason's book. That is the magic and power of Jason Reynolds. It's now my privilege to introduce Brit Bennett. Born and raised in Southern California, Brit Bennett graduated from Stanford University and later earned her MFA in fiction at the University of Michigan, where she won a Hopwood Award in graduate short fiction, as well as the 2014 Hurston Wright Award for college writers. A 5 under 35 honoree, her work is featured in The New Yorker, The Paris Review, Jezebel, and more, and her first novel, The Mothers, was a New York Times bestseller. Brit Bennett's second novel, The Vanishing Half, was named a Best Book of the Year by Entertainment Weekly, Vulture, USA Today, GQ, Vanity Fair, Harper's Bazaar, Glamour, and Bustle. And by me, and by many of you, I'm sure. It has been on the New York Times bestseller list for 23 weeks. Everyone, please welcome Jason Reynolds and Brit Bennett.
Hey Britt. Hey Britt.
Hi.
How goes it? How are you? Everybody's good? You're good?
I'm good. Yeah, I hope you're good too.
I'm all right. Hi everybody. I'm Jason. I'll be sort of hosting this thing tonight. Forgive me, by the way, if I keep looking down. My father is in the hospital, so just know that I'm looking at for my mother with you. I got you, just making sure I can take care of all my stuff. But I'm here with you. I'm good with you. I want to shout out the San Antonio Book Festival for having us. And shout out to Nowhere Bookstore. Please buy the book, Vanishing Half. Vanishing Half. I mean, look, the book been out for how long? How long the book been out?
Since June.
So everybody already read it. Y'all already have it. You know what I'm saying? let me ask you something. So listen, you know that I work primarily with young people and write primarily for young people. So this is going to be a little different. Because honestly, Britt, you have to be tired of this. Like honestly, can I just be okay? Let's have a moment of transparency. Honestly, let's just have a moment of transparency. Come on, you got to be tired of this. You got
It's been a lot of Zoom.
You know the questions. You know the questions that are going to be asked, right? You know that Nella Larson's going to be brought up. You know. Right? Like you've got to be exhausted. So I'm going to do something a little different.
Okay.
And you don't know about this because we didn't talk about it. But let's just see how it goes. And if it goes south, I still have my questions here, and we can do the traditional thing. But I do want to try to. I just be bored sometimes, Britt, and we do this a lot, and it's like I know the questions, I know the answers. We try to be enthused. We're really not enthused. This is the truth. For all the audience members, this is how it really goes. My first question is going to be a little bit of a strange question, but it's something that I ask everybody that I'm in conversation with, and it has nothing to do with your book. And the question is, if you could go back and talk to your, I don't know, let's say your 12-year-old self, what would you thank her for?
Ooh, that's a good question. That's not where I thought you were going to go with it. Yeah, I mean, well, first I'll just say I like that question because I think the way that that's usually framed is, some like, how would you instruct yourself in some way? This idea that my adult self knows more than my 12-year-old self knows. But your question kind of inverts that in an interesting way. I think I would thank her for. I mean, when I was 12, like I knew then that I loved stories. I had no idea that I was going to be a writer. I didn't know that that was anything that you could do. I had never met a writer. I just thought of writers as sort of dead people that, you had books on your shelf and they were dead. So I had no conception of my future self as a writer, but I think I very much was a writer when I was 12. I loved books. I loved stories, loved reading. I loved writing stories on like our family computer, or I would be thinking about stories when I was sitting somewhere in class or in church or something. I would always be thinking about it. And I think that was when I engaged with stories in a way that was very pure, because I was not thinking about craft. I wasn't thinking about technique. I was not thinking about what would sell or what was marketable. I was purely engaging with story as somebody who loved to read and loved thinking about story. And to me, that's like the purest form of myself as a reader and as a writer, is who I was when I was a kid. So I think I would thank her for that, for sort of nurturing that very kind of open passion for something, with no expectation that it was going to pan out or benefit in any way. Just a part of me when I was younger who just sort of openly pursued what she loved. I think I would thank her for that.
Surprised? Are you surprised by it all?
What'd you say?
Are you surprised by it all? Like, here you are, superstar Brit Bennett. You got Times Square billboards. You got #1 New York Times bestseller. You got movie joint happening. You got, what does it feel? I mean, I'm asking honestly, like, what does it feel like to be Brit Bennett right now?
I mean, yes, I'm definitely surprised. I think this year has been, it's been the most surreal year in everyone's life, probably. So it feels silly to say that. But I think for my life, it's been for better and for worse, this sort of surrealness of this pandemic and all of the just sort of, personal things that we all deal with in our lives. And then this sort of inverse of that has been just the just unbelievable reception to this book. Every step of the way, I have been completely shocked. I really hoped, I didn't know what to expect when I realized that the lockdown was happening and that you know, at first people were like, oh, maybe it's going to last for a few weeks or like a month or something. So I thought the time my book was coming out in June, I thought, oh, maybe things will be like reopened by then. But then when I realized that, you know, we were going to be in this quarantine for a while, I had no idea if bookstores were going to be open, if they would still exist in June. I mean, I really had no idea what the reception of this book would be within this particular climate. So every step of it has been shocking, surprising, and I just feel very grateful that people have embraced this book, and in like a larger sense, but in like a very personal sense, it truly gave me something to be so happy and grateful about in this year that was so challenging in a lot of different ways.
It's interesting. I root for you. When the mothers came out, I remember, first of all, I remember the marketing campaign for the mothers, which was wild because those bags started popping up, right? It was the most brilliant. It was the most brilliant thing, like, because like no matter what city I was in, like DC or New York or LA, it was like these bags. They would just like pop up. Like these bags would be like popping up, and people would be walking around. You're like, where did you get that bag? I'm like, oh, like, it was like a secret campaign. I thought this shit was brilliant. Right? I'm like, yo, whatever it's about to be is amazing. And the mothers came to me in an arc, and I read it, and I watched an interview with you before anyone knew who you were, and you were talking about how you don't live your life under the weight of race. And this was an interesting thing. And this is not getting. I'm going to get into the game I want to play with you in a moment, but it just came to mind as you were talking about this phenomenal professional year you're having, in a strange way, in a strange vacuum we're all living in. But I remember just feeling like this is someone I'm going to root for, because this is someone who was willing to complicate the argument and is willing to push the line a bit and say, like, but what about me, who grew up in this town, who didn't think about these things in the way that every Black writer is pretending to have thought about these things, right? It's like, what if my life was sweet and I was just chilling, and it wasn't like, and I remember listening to you being like, that wasn't my experience, but because we are polylyphic, it's so dope to know that those stories should exist in the world. Just the stories about Black humans living as humans first. And not allowing, and race is always a part of our story in some way, shape, or form, but not allowing it to be a weight, not allowing it to be the plot. Even in Vanishing Half, where the racial dynamics is obviously woven into the plot, it still doesn't necessarily feel like a book about race, so to speak. It feels like a book about family, a book about relationship, a book about performance, a book about opportunity, right? All sorts of other things. But we'll get to that in a second. I want to play this game with you really quick, Brit. You got to give me 2 seconds though, because my stepmother is texting, and I apologize that we have to do all this. Sorry, 1 second. I'm going tomorrow. Things are not on my side, but we have to make the show will go on. All right, so here's how this game is going to go. This is what we're going to do. Because we're in a quarantine, there's a lot of stuff that we can't do, which is pretty much everything that we would normally be doing. We can't do anything. Let's pick 6 things. 6 things that you wish you could do, right? Whatever your jam is, right? 6 things that you wish you could do that you can't do because of quarantine. And I'm going to jot them down.
Okay. I'm like self-conscious about the order in which I'm listing these things. This is not an order of priority. This is the order that they are bringing to me. First one was go see a movie in a theater. The second would be go to a bar with my friends. Third would be see my family in California. Fourth would definitely be travel abroad. Fifth, I will say book tour. Book tour is exhausting, but I do wish I could like do events like this in person for 5. And 6, man, I guess eat in a restaurant. Maybe it's related to a bar, but
Go to a
go to a nice dinner. Oh yeah, go to a concert. Actually, yeah, that's better.
Or go to a concert. All right, here's what we're gonna do. So for all of you watching and engaging with us in this moment, I'm sure you know what the Vanishing Half is about, but if you don't know, I won't make Brit do the work. I'll give you guys I'll give you my quick sort of spark notes. The Vanishing Half is about twin sisters, Desiree and Stella, one of whom has decided, and they split, in adulthood, they go separate ways, and one decides to live her life as a white woman. She passes as a white woman, and the other does not. And not only does the other not live as a white woman, the other also has a child, as we say, darker than blue, right? Has a black child who is a dark-skinned black girl, and moves back to the small town of Mallard, Louisiana, which is a town that chooses homogeny in a really strange way as it pertains to color. And it's all about sort of the politics and the relationship and all the things sort of wound up in these two, in the two sisters' stories, as it pertains to their lives together and apart, right? So that's it in a nutshell, so to speak. Give or take a few important details. So here's what we're gonna do, Britt. I believe, this is my theory, I believe that all of us are inside out writers, right? Even those of us who act like we're not, right? I think that the best of us are inside out writers. I think Toni Morrison was an inside out writer. I think Baldwin was an inside out writer. These are people who it is impossible to shake some of who we are when we are sort of putting down the words to build whatever stories and worlds that we're trying to build. And whatever we're trying to communicate, it is impossible. It's like mama's mac and cheese. My mother cannot leave her love out of it. I know my mama's mac and cheese. I can pick it out of all the mac and cheese. I can pick it out because I know my mom gonna put some of my mama in it, right? So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna take the things that you wish you could do in quarantine, and I'm gonna ask you to stretch. This is gonna be some stretching. You're gonna have to figure this out. I'm gonna ask you to connect it to themes in the book. Okay, so so if we're gonna let's pick, you would go see a movie. What is it about the theater experience that you can connect to a theme? And you feel me? You got the rules to the game.
Yes.
It's gonna be so much better. Okay. All right, you ready? Let's see if you can do it. And
okay, I'll try.
We're gonna be giving y'all gems about the book, so be paying attention. You know what I mean? This is a much better way to ask these questions, all right?
I'll try. I mean, so I think what I do love, watch so many movies in quarantine. Like I love watching movies. I'll stream them, I'll watch them wherever. But I particularly love going to the theater. I think there's
What's your favorite?
What's the favorite movie?
Quarantine. What's been your favorite quarantine?
In quarantine. Probably Mulholland Drive. I had never seen that movie. And yes. And yeah, I loved it. I'd never seen it. So I've watched a lot of movies in quarantine, as we all have, I think. But I love going to the movie theater because I think, one, it's like a communal activity. Like I usually go with other people that I enjoy. And there's something about the anonymity of the theater when you're just sitting in the dark with a bunch of strangers and nobody knows who else is in there with you, but you're all just experiencing a story together. There's something about that I really love. So I think that those kind of ideas of not only sort of communally experiencing narrative, but I think about sort of performance, which I think is one of the big themes of the book. That type of narrative performance that you're witnessing in a movie theater. So yeah, I think there's something about communally enjoying story that I love about movie theater. And I think in the book, I guess one of the characters is an actor. She's not a movie star, but she is an actor. And I think that dovetails into some of the ideas about performance and communal watching. Maybe in that way.
That's dope. That's what I was thinking about too. I was like, man, it would be like that. When you said that, I was like, the movie theater, I was like, man, I think of the opening scene, right? Like the idea that we all go to the movies to watch a spectacle, right? Like we're paying to basically witness a spectacle. That's the point, to be entertained and to sort of gawk at something that is not us, Like that's literally what we're doing. Even if we're trying to find ourselves in the film, right? It's like we really are there to be like, I'm waiting for the turn. I'm waiting for the explosion. I'm waiting for the drama. I'm waiting for the conflict. When I think of the opening scene in this book, and for those of you who haven't read it, you should. But I'll tell you just briefly. Desiree shows up at the town with her daughter, and the whole town is just like just watching. Like they're just watching. It's painful in a way, and it's absurd. It feels like they're sitting. It feels like they're watching a movie, like they're watching, and a movie that they're a bit enamored by and a bit disgusted by, and it's just super fascinating. All right, good answer, Brit. Good answer. All right, number 2. Are you ready?
Sure.
Let's see what you can do. I'm gonna pick. I'm not gonna go in order. See my family in California. That was your answer. You would go and see your family in California.
Yes. Yeah, well, I guess one thing I'll say, I don't know if this is necessarily a theme, but just connecting to the book, which is this book kind of sneakily became a California book as I was writing it. I did not intend to write about California. My first book is set where I grew up in California, and the second one, this, like you said, it takes place in this town in Louisiana, and I thought of it as a Southern novel, maybe, but it kind of sneakily takes a shift towards California, which I think maybe your writing always kind of bends towards home in a way, even if you don't necessarily intend it to. And I think I've always been really interested in that migration, particularly of Black people from the South to California, because I think that's kind of a lesser known migration, or one that's written about less than Black people going north or to the East Coast. So I've always been really interested. That's like the migration that my family took to California. So in a way, I think this book was kind of took me along that journey with them as I was writing it, and the characters end up west.
Have you read Morgan's book? Was it Stranger Wandering?
I haven't read it yet. No.
It's fascinating because it's all about the migration patterns of her family and how they splintered, and how we all assume that like I think about my own family, they're South Carolinians, and they all came up the East Coast, right? It's like the assumption is they all went from South Carolina to DC, Philadelphia, and New York, which is where we all primarily live. But after reading Morgan's book and talking to her, I wonder if some of us went the other way. Right. We never talk about it. It's like people, like it wasn't, some people went to St. Louis and Chicago, some people went out west, you know what I mean? And we just don't ever talk about the Black migration in California. Yes. And the Pacific Northwest too.
Yes.
Which is a whole other thing.
Yes.
Cool. All right, let's do go to a bar. You would go to a bar and get drunk.
Yeah, I mean, I think for that it makes me think of the scenes of communal partying in The Vanishing Half, which I think were my favorite scenes to write, honestly.
And no one ever talked about them.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of, there's a lot of heavy themes in the book. So it was so joyful to write scenes where people were partying, going, drinking on somebody's roof, celebrating someone's birthday, just this community that was gathering once you get to California, and particularly this character Jude that you described, Desiree's daughter, who grows up feeling like so much of an outcast in Mallard. And once you see her as an adult, she actually finds community and finds friends, and they have this revelry together. And that was something that I really enjoyed writing, and also felt was interesting and fun to write, but I felt also important in a book that did feel heavy at times, to have that moment of joy within the book.
I would love for someone to do? I would love for someone to take some of our books and just pull out excerpts from all the moments of joy. Because I think so often people, they read something and it's a book about a whole life or whole lives and whole stories. But whenever we talk about it, whenever I read reviews, and I read reviews on The Vanishing Half, obviously, whenever, everybody is just like, oh man, there's pain, and it's like that ain't really how we work, right? Like, yes, there's pain there. There's always levity in our lives that we wouldn't be able to have without it, right? The other thing about the bar, when you said the bar, the other thing that I was thinking about is bar spaces are so interesting because, especially in places like in cities, because you could be sitting next to somebody that you know, but have never met. It's a weird, right? And when I think about the Vanishing Half, when I think about the sisters, when I think about Loretta, and so I don't want to play insider baseball just in case people haven't read it. So there's the most, to me, and I'm sure that everybody who's interviewed you thus far, one of the most brilliant turns in the book, one of the most brilliant plot points in this book is that there's a Black family. So Stella she's married to this wild, kind of nice, but oblivious. He's like, you know what he is? He's literally like the white man, right? He's like he's like a white man. You know what I mean? Like when you think of a white man, this is who what's his name? Blake, right? He has a white man name, right? Like this is like the whitest white man, right? And what I mean by that is he's the white man that really believes he's not the white man, but like, the white, he's that white man, right? So they rich and they you know they're comfortable, they live in this nice neighborhood, it's this, that, and the third, and then a rich Black family moves in. And right across the way. They're like right there, right? They can see each other. They live in like a cul-de-sac. And so they can see each other. And because they're Black, and see, Black people got this thing, not all of us, but a lot of us, right? It's like a special spidey sense, right? It's like, look, I don't care what you look like. I know. I might not always know you Black, but I know you ain't white. I always know you ain't white. That's a thing we do, right? It's a thing that we all have. It's like I don't know what it is, but I know you ain't white, right? And so there's a lot of interesting scenes with them. By the way, one of the most brilliant parts of the book is that Stella wows out and doesn't want the family to move in, and she's all angry and is bitching at the home ownership association, whatever the thing is about how they stand for a Black family. Meanwhile, she a whole Black person, but and that's the whole complicated listen, I want y'all to know, I'm giving y'all plot point gems right now. I'm really, And so when I think about the two of them, though, when I think about Loretta and Stella, it makes me think about those strangers in the bar, right? That feeling of yo, I know you, but we ain't never met, but I know you from somewhere. You know what I mean? It's that weird thing that happens in the bar sometimes. It's man, I miss those days. Maybe one day we'll all drink at bars again.
Yes, hopefully.
All right, let's go on. We only got 10 more minutes. Oh no, we have a few more to do. All right, what about go to a concert? Concerts are interesting. Go to a concert.
Yeah, I mean, I love live music. I think maybe the last music I spent last New Year's in New Orleans, one of my favorite cities, obviously one of our great musical cities, and was just wandering in and out of various blues clubs and listening to whoever was on stage. So yeah, I mean, I think it kind of lends itself to that communal experience of art that was similar to the movie theater. But yeah, I mean, I think there's something about that communal joy, and and I think again, it's true. I think of what a lot of us are missing during this quarantine, which is that experience of coming together. And I think there are a lot of moments of that in The Vanishing Half, of characters coming together and also then kind of scattering and splintering apart.
Yeah, for sure. I think about much like the bar scene, concerts are another one of those weird spaces where concerts remind me of the New York City subway, right? It's like when we all come into this particular machine or this space, these walls, we are equal, right? Like in this space, it doesn't matter who you are, and you no longer have as much of a say as to who you're standing next to anymore. And whether or not you agree or disagree, or you're sort of because you know that in this moment we're all singing the same song. I think, and that's like the beauty of the concert, right? And I think about that when I think of oh gosh, let me get my notes. I think of Jude's partner,
Reese.
Reese, thank you. And I think of Jude and Reese, and which I thought was such I thought their relationship was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's interesting also, Brit, because I think sometimes right now, because of the world we live in, and because we're all learning so many of us are learning new language, and we're sort of unfolding and undoing so many of our biases. Sometimes we write characters and we sort of force them into spaces, and we create caricatures. And I just think you didn't do that when it came to Reese, which I'm so grateful for. As a human, I'm not a trans person, but as a human being, it was just awesome to see this character be human on the page, because that's what it's like, right? Like when it doesn't. I just watched right before I got on this call with you. I was watching an interview. Please watch it, Brit. It just came out a week ago. They just released it a week ago. It was Maya Angelou talking to James Baldwin, right? And that James Baldwin had just turned 50. Maya's probably like 45, right? So got the, like, sugar bush, right? And they're talking, and she said, Jimmy, tell me, and they're clearly, and they talk about like how she's been adopted into his family. They've known each other for years, you know, the whole Harlem, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. And she says, Jimmy, you know, tell me that thing you always tell me about homosexuality. And he starts to laugh. He said, no, just tell me, because every time you tell me, I want to hear this answer again and again and again. And he said, well, people always ask me, am I a homosexual? And I have to explain to them the homosexual is not a noun, right? As far as he was concerned, right? Being a writer, right? He's like, it's a verb, transitive. This is what he's saying in the and then he's like, furthermore, he said, if I love you, then to duck that love is to die. And that's it. Right? Like, and it was just this like, and so, and that is the concert, right? It's like, I don't care who you are, if the song is on and we all know the words, it would be a shame to not sing it together. It would be a shame, right? And I just think you do that so well. And many parts of the book, not just with Jude and Reese, but in many parts of the book. The other thing about the music, Brit, is I think your writing is super musical. And it's funny because I read a lot of things about you, but nobody ever talks about how the prose is super musical. And as somebody who was trained as a poet and did all that stuff, and there's so much music. I mean, the first sentence is like 4 lines, right? The first
yeah, it's long.
Which I find to be delicious. And I think there's something to be said for the musicality of your. I think we all talk about sort of like the clarity of your writing. I think I personally love the fact that you are a clean writer. I think we talk about sort of the plots of your stories. I think we talk about the sort of the familiarity of the characters. Everybody feel like we know these people every day. That's like the Brit Bennett thing is like, y'all feel like and mothers, everybody was like, oh, these are like my family members. I know this church lady. I know it, right? Like, I think that's like that's one of your gifts. I also think that we should also start tipping our hats to the fact that you are a musical writer. All right, we have absolutely. That's what I'm giving you our loops right now, homie. Like, that's what I'm doing for you. All right, let's do one more, and then I'm gonna ask just 2 more quick questions after this. Travel abroad.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things that I'm most grateful that being a writer has brought me, because I'd only been abroad once when I was studying abroad in college. And then after The Mothers came out, that book took me so many other places. And I think what I love is, again, coming back to this anonymity, but I love traveling to a country where nobody knows you and you don't speak the language and you're just walking around. And I think that kind of wandering spirit is true of a lot of the characters in the book. There are a lot of wanderers in this book. Mm-hmm. There are lots of characters who are often running from something, but also characters that are kind of just wandering and exploring, whether it is Early, the bounty hunter, who's kind of a wanderer.
Best character, the only decent man in the book. Shout out my man Early. I was rooting for Early. I'm like, Brit killing us. I understand. I got you. I'm with you. But shout out to Early.
So early, Stella's a wanderer. Her daughter is a wanderer. I mean, there's lots of characters that are wanderers. So I think that's what I really love the most about going abroad is really just being somewhere new where nobody really knows you and just being able to kind of explore.
Perfect. Such a good answer. All right. So here's my other question. This is so that you played the game amazingly. I'm so glad we did it this way. By the way, I thought this was a risk. I'm gonna try something new here, and I actually thought that was pretty cool. Here's a question that's outside of the game. If you had to eliminate all books about passing, what books is your book in conversation with? So that means passing, Ocasia's out. All those books.
Right. So no books on passing. Okay.
Because I'm sure everyone's been saying this reminds me of Caucasian. I'm sure you've heard that.
That is what they say. Yeah, well, I think one is, I guess it's hard for me to think of in conversation because I'm thinking that feels like forward moving where I'm thinking of it backwards of like what inspired me to write this. So one I think is Silver Sparrow by T.R. Jones, which I just love that book. It's a book about sisters. They are half sisters, and that was what I thought the structure of the Vanishing Half would be, where you have like one half of the book from one sister's perspective and the other half from the other sister. That was what I wanted to write. So I think that was one book that was I just thought was like complicated sister relationship. Loved that book. So that book I think is one big one. Another one that I mean, I don't know that my book is in conversation with this book, but another one that I've read and thought about is this book called Playing Dead by Elizabeth Greenwood, which is about faking your death. And that was just a book that helped me think about the psychology of reinventing yourself. And was like, totally different idea and topic about people who decide to fake their deaths and how you can just assume a new identity for 20 years and your whole family thinks that you've died. So that was another book that came to mind. So those are two that came to mind first. But I think there are some of these books like tangentially involve passing, but something like the Wedding by Dorothy West, which is again like complicated intergenerational sagas of Black families. So I think those types of books too were also ones I thought about a lot.
Have you read These Ghosts Are Family by Macy Card?
No, I haven't read that one. Okay.
It's about a man who fakes his death and his daughters, and he's about to tell his daughters that like he's their father. Like he's about to break it to his kids. Like I'm actually right here in the apartment that you want.
Okay, yeah, I will like that.
She's a debut novelist. She's a librarian. I think that she should have won everything, and she got snubbed. She's fantastic. Macy Card, These Ghosts of Family. You know what I got from this book? You know who I thought about, and I'm gonna put you in the Rushmore. So brace yourself. But this is what this is what for me, because I was thinking like, all right, well, what's the, you know how like you bite something? What's in the back of the throat, right? Like when I read this book, what am I tasting in the back of the throat? And I'm tasting Sula, right? Like there's Sula there, right? For lots of reasons. And I was like, oh man, some Sula here. I'm getting that. I'm tasting the color purple. Yo,
books that I love.
Yo, and I think that's the reason why I want to play the game. Like it's like everything is already in there and it's like coming out, because that's what I'm reading. I'm like, oh, okay, we got some Sula here, we got some Alice Walker here, and I thought it was wonderful. It was good to see some of those things, some of those themes, or some of those like just the essences of some of that stuff in contemporary, from a contemporary writer writing a story about something that's so complicated. My last question is a simple one. I ask everybody this question as well to end my interviews. I believe that what we're so fortunate to do for a living is so difficult that there's no way that we can be the same after completing anything. There's no way that you can come through the gauntlet of writing a novel and not be different. And my question is, what did you learn about you this time around?
Yeah. I mean, I think a part of it was I learned. I mean, I think I learned that I need to trust my instincts because they are good. That was something
Yeah.
that I like. That was something that I struggled with because you know, the experience of writing a second book is so different than writing a debut. And I had a lot of moments of self-doubt as I was working on this book. But eventually learned that I need to trust my instincts when I feel like something is not working, when I feel like something is working. That doesn't mean I don't want to listen to any feedback or anything, but that sort of gut inclination is something that's good that I should listen to. And that's something that I think is true in my writing, and also something that I've tried to apply to my larger life of trusting myself more.
Fantastic answer. You gotta watch that interview, Brit, because they because they have a good laugh about the idea of an artist being successful. You have to watch it. They're like, that's not that's not like, the moment that you reach success, they're like, if you really believe that you are successful, it's over. Like it's all over.
That sounds right.
All right, so we have a question. Clay is going to get the questions going. If you have a question, folks in the audience, please feel free to put it in the chat because we do want to get your questions. We got about, I think, 15 minutes left with the wonderful and talented and brilliant Brit Bennett. First question is from Sarah. Brit, did you intend the word vanishing? I kind of already know the answer to this question. I just got a feeling. Did you intend the word? Did you intend the word vanishing to apply to more characters than just the sisters? It seems like it applies to so many of the characters. Brit, can I please say something? Please, let me say something. Please. I'm willing to bet. Okay, answer the question. But I'm willing to bet that you ain't picked the title. But now you answer the question.
Wait, say that again?
So I'm willing to bet that you didn't pick the title. But you go ahead.
I did not pick the title. No, I did not. No, the title came from my agent because we could not find it. Like, I could not find a title for this book. I weirdly, like, all of the sections have titles, so I was fine coming up with titles for those sections. When it came to like the overarching title for the book, I just had no idea what to call the book. So yeah, it was kind of a collaborative effort to arrive at the title. But I think that the reason why we liked it was what Sarah's pointing out is that Vanishing Half in particular, it speaks to a lot of the arcs of the different characters. With Stella obviously vanishing, there are characters that are losing parts of themselves or that are transforming into something different or leaving some self behind. There's kind of the idea of this is like a vanishing half of this family that is disappearing or disintegrating into this like larger white world, and being fractured off from this family line. And I think I also just liked it because there was something really kind of unsettling about just that phrase, the vanishing half. It is disturbing. You're like, what's disappearing? So, and it's also, I think, visual. It lends itself well to a visual. So those are all the reasons why it kind of came together. But I think it operates on those different levels.
Were they afraid at all that it would lend itself to being a ghost story? Because that's what I thought it was going to be. That's what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. No, I don't know if anyone thought about that, but I do. I mean, I don't know. I think most stories are ghost stories, right? Like there's some sense of, particularly writing about race, like that's all, we're all being haunted by something, right? So I don't know that they're worried about that specific reading, but I think it's also not an inaccurate reading of the book.
Gotcha. Marilyn says, I'm familiar with the issue of passing, family stories from decades ago, Nella Larson, etc. The book, however, left stories unfinished. Was this intentional, or will there be a follow-up that continues the stories of the characters?
I get asked this a lot. I get asked this a lot. I have no immediate plans for any type of follow-up. I think for myself as a reader, I like stories that don't wrap up super neatly. I like to wonder about characters and imagine them kind of that they're off somewhere living their life, even though the book has closed. And I know that not all readers are like that, but I think that's how I'm oriented as a reader. So as a writer, that's usually how I'm kind of oriented, is sort of allowing the characters to kind of, and I think with this book in particular, it was difficult figuring out how to end it because there are so many different characters and there's so many different arcs. And I knew that the obvious ending was like, the whole gang gathers together. We're all coming together at some event. We're at, and then here's everybody. Yeah, at a reunion at the end. I knew that was the obvious, but that also there was no way that made sense for any of these characters. So I knew that it was going to be a little bit more of a maybe ambiguous ending in a way. But I think that's also the way that I am oriented as a reader.
I like the ending. I thought it was dope. And I agree. I'm always one of those people who subscribe to you start your novel a chapter late and end your novel a chapter early. I always believe that. Margaret wants to know if Brit has a favorite character in the novel, and if so, why is it that particular character? Please don't let it be that little white girl. What's her name? Kennedy.
I mean, Kennedy, definitely not my favorite character, but I did enjoy writing her. I think it's fun to write characters who behave badly,
Right.
Just writing this character who, is late everywhere, makes everybody wait for her. Like that type of attitude was really fun to channel. I think my favorite character is probably Early. I think that he ended up being kind of a stealth. I think originally I thought he was going to just have like a very small role in the book. He ended up taking kind of occupying more space in the book than I originally intended. But I loved his story. I loved writing this character who was very different, is very different from me, this bounty hunter. But this character who is someone who wanders, who is somebody who has a lot of hurt inside of him, but keeps a lot of it in, but also it doesn't make him bitter and mean. He doesn't become this sort of bitter, mean person. He is somebody who is like vulnerable and tender, although he doesn't like express it that much. And I think I also just have like a soft spot for characters who are like that, who just feel a lot, but have to keep it kind of inside. So I think he's definitely my favorite character.
I want to tell you a very, 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 very quick story. I was fortunate enough to go to Alice Walker's 75th birthday party. And she was having a breakfast with a bunch of young people from the university. This is in Eatonton, Georgia, right? Little teeny town. And everyone from like Atlanta, whoever was close by came to this little town to meet her. And there was a man sitting in the corner of the breakfast, kind of off. So he had on like overalls, older black man, maybe in his late 60s. And she said, "Didn't have any questions." And he raised his hand first. And she said, "Well, I need to get to the young people first." And he said, mine isn't a question. I just want to say something to you. And he said, "Ma'am, I don't know who you are. I have no idea who you are." He said, "Apparently you've done pretty well for yourself. But my daughter," he said, I'm a poor man from Eatonton, Georgia. I will always be a poor man from Eatonton, Georgia. But my daughter is in college, which means she's already done more than me. And she told me to bring her here. So I brought her here. And turns out you're an interesting person. Congratulations on your life. I have no clue who you are." And he begins to cry. And all of us in the room thought to ourselves, we never see him.
Mm-hmm.
In the book, right? He's not, yes, it's hard for him to emote, but he also will do anything for his daughter.
Yeah.
He don't have much, but he got a whole lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so cool to see that in Early. I'm glad that's your favorite character. It was definitely my favorite character as well. All right. Stephanie says, "I love the Vanishing Half. What's the meaning of the multiple references to Santa Claus in the story?"
Honestly, I don't even know. I don't remember where that pops up. So I know there was a section that takes place around Christmas time. I know that. But yeah, I don't know where it pops up. I'd have to see the actual text. I think sometimes, your brain, you're just choosing things as you're writing, and there is not always a deeper resonance.
But that's right, because then like people will read it and be like, "Yo, I know why you did that Santa Claus thing." And you're like, you're like, tell me so I can say it publicly when somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. Someone give me a good close reading of it.
All right, we got two more questions and then we'll wrap it up. This one is again from Sarah. Welcome back, Sarah. Brit, have you ever seen the movie Imitation of Life? I know you have, Brit. Imitation of Life. This book seems to have been influenced by the idea of one woman pretending to be someone she is not. So have you seen Imitation of Life?
Yes. Yeah, that was, I think, the first story I ever saw on Passing. I remember my mom made me watch the movie, and I don't think she was showing it to me to talk about race. Like, it's just, it's a beloved melodrama. And for my mom, it was like, see, this is what happens when when you're not good to your mother. Like, when I die, you will be sobbing on my casket. Like, that's why she wanted me to watch the movie. But I remember being so struck by it, finding it very strange, because it never occurred to me as a child that somebody could pass for white or that they would want to do that. Those were things that I just did not conceive of. So it was striking to me, I think, in that way. And I think also it was kind of the type of story I knew that I didn't want to write, because Imitation of Life is, a very moralizing story. It's like, well, this character's passed, so that's why she gets punished. She did something wrong. I knew I didn't want to do that. So I think that it's strangely sort of our most enduring, at least probably American film about passing. But yeah, very iconic. And yeah, like also about, I guess, complicated mother-daughter relationship. So I guess in that way, I'm sure some of that filtered down into me as I was writing this book.
Yeah. I would love to read a book, because do we have any stories about men passing?
I guess the one that comes to mind is the autobiography of an ex-colored man. But I have a very half-baked thought about, why our most iconic passing characters are women. But that's something I haven't thought about enough, but that does seem to be that fascination. And even, now with the sort of Rachel Dolezals of it all, they continue to be women. So I think there is something tied in with gender and race and self-determination and power. Yeah, there's something about that, it seems. Because obviously all the people who passed were obviously not all women, but those are the characters that we are really fixated on as a culture. So I don't know. I haven't thought about that enough, but I do think that there is something interesting there.
There's something I think about Gene Toomer, the novelist Gene Toomer, and he passed. He wrote Cain, right? So he wrote it about us, but he wouldn't even call himself a Negro. He called himself an American, so that he could move between the lines as freely as he wanted.
Right. And I think Well, I think also, like, to that point, I think in part because, the narrative of being a man, the idea of being able to go your own way and like set out and chart your own path, that's something that we are comfortable with for men to do. But I think for a woman to separate from her family and to separate all of those elements, even race aside, just the idea to be a woman and be like, I'm going to reinvent myself and choose my path. That is already transgressive, let alone choosing to be, live your life as another race. So I feel like that's part of why maybe we're so fascinated with women who pass. But I don't know. I'm sure somebody very smart has written about this, but I would love to read that.
Yeah, you should watch the last episode of like Find Your with this gay show. There's a guy on there whose grandfather was a part of the Tuskegee experiment and almost got to skip it because he looked white, because he passed. And they were wow. Might be white, but we're not sure. And they went through this whole process to figure out if he was white or not. And he looked white, but they were like, he's black in the shot, right? And that was that. Crazy, I know. Last question, Rhonda asked both of us, what are we reading now?
I'm reading and loving Mariah Carey's book, The Meaning of Mariah. I strongly recommend it. The audiobook is great if you have it, because she narrates it and also sings. But it's just it's like strangely, also maybe not strangely, but like it's a really great book about race. It's about her musical career, but also the way in which her career has kind of been a result of her childhood and growing up as a biracial child in a white neighborhood, and then her career eventually, the music that she produced originally kind of straddling racial lines in a way that at the time made people uncomfortable, but now is clearly the way that pop music went. So it is a really good book. And she's like a really self-aware and funny narrator. And that's always kind of how I imagined her to be, but it's nicely affirming that, like, oh yeah, she's a really funny and self-aware narrator about her own life, which is not true of a lot of people, let alone celebrities. Yeah, I recommend it.
For me, I'm reading Lenny Kravitz's autobiography, which is super fascinating. Talk about a life. I mean, he basically was raised. He sat at the access point of like every major cultural shift in the 1970s and early 80s, because he was a kid in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn at the beginning of hip hop. He was a kid, and then on the weekends he spent on the Upper East Side with his mother and father, and and the beginning of punk music. And then in the summers, he spent in LA because his parents were on television at the beginning of like skater culture. And it's just super interesting to see what that makes, right? It makes Lenny Kravitz. That's the answer. It makes Lenny Kravitz,
Right.
and so it makes perfection. There you go. And so I'm reading that, and then I'm also rereading the Song of Solomon.
Oh yeah,
like
I reread that this summer.
Yo,
perfect book.
It's wildly perfect. Like I'm rereading. I'm working on something, and I'm trying to get that flavor. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get it in me. Brit, this has been dope. I hope I at least shook it up a little bit for you.
You did. Thank you. This was fun.
Good. I want to say really quickly, please click and buy the link at Nowhere Bookstore so you guys can get the Vanishing Half. This is a fantastic book, another masterpiece by the great Brit Bennett, who I'm sure will have many more masterpieces to come. Thank you to San Antonio Book Festival. We appreciate y'all for having us. I hope y'all had a good time. And yeah, man, stay safe, wash your hands, wear a mask, and tell each other you love one another as often as possible. Y'all be good.